that she could have. It could have, yeah, that makes sense.
It was just an idea, trying to make sense of how that because they're
Switch is on, here comes the throttle. Circuit breakers in. We have separation. Inboard and outboard, they're on. I'm coming forward with the sightseeing. Looks good. Roger. I've got a blowout. Vapor 3. Pitch to 0. Pitch is up. I can't hold altitude. Correction. Alpha 4 is off. Flight is emergency. Flight call. I can't hold it. She's breaking up. She's breaking.
Hey guys, sorry. Thanks guys for the heads up about the muted. Yeah, I turned it off because I had a phone call and I didn't want you guys to have to listen through the phone call. But I'm back. Hopefully you can hear me now. I'll wait till you guys give me the thumbs up. Good now. All right. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Welcome back. Wow, 3 nights in a row. This is not what I really wanted to be doing this every night, but it's fun to be with you guys. And there's no choice to come back because there is a bunch of big breaking news and a lot of stuff to discuss tonight. Ted Daniels is reporting that the feds have turned over their materials to both parties. So we'll look at that. He also has a video on it. So we'll take a look at that. It's a short video. What else is coming out? Well, there are some things that can't be said, but I don't think that Turtle Boy's not going anywhere tomorrow, guys. For anybody that's waiting for him to get out of jail, ain't gonna happen. Sorry. So there's more stuff to go over that we've gleaned from the documents in the last 2 days. And something that I looked into today that I want to go over with you is the vehicle data, right? So the defense recently said that there was no event, in other words, a collision on the vehicle data. Now, the only other things that we know about the vehicle data go back to September. And so I'm going to read that to you again, maybe show it to you if I can get that script up there highlighted. It's not long. It's only a couple of paragraphs. And so we'll try to make some sense of this. And when you start looking into the vehicle data and re-examining things like Jen's statements, some of the indications about the GPS, it actually brings up some really interesting possibilities, things that we've all been kind of missing here. Or at least it opens the doors to some different theories. And I brought up a little bit of it last night, but I'm going to invite you guys to keep going over this with me. I'm sure the state isn't paying attention to us, and they do this all on their own, and they have a good accident reconstruction theory. So, but we on the outside, it's an interesting exercise to look at this. So we'll go back and look at it. But let's start with let's maybe bring up the Ted Data thing, Ted Daniels piece for you. I'll share that with. All right.
25 investigators learned the U.S. Attorney's Office for Massachusetts has turned over findings from its probe of law enforcement's handling of the Reed case. The Norfolk DA's office and her attorneys now know what the feds know, but they're prohibited from sharing the materials with the public. This comes just days after the DA's office called Reed's claims of a cover-up misleading and disingenuous in a massive 300-page filing. The filing talks about a private investigator named Stephen Scanlon. The defense says he was the first to come forward with allegations John O'Keefe was beaten to death and not struck by Reed's SUV. Well, according to state police, Scanlon does not consider himself a whistleblower. He says he only shared a theory based on his opinion and the media reports, and he had no personal knowledge of what happened. The DA's office says they've definitively confirmed through 2 experts that Jennifer McCabe's "How Long to Die in Cold" Google search occurred following the discovery of O'Keefe's body and not hours earlier, like the defense claims. And the DA's office accuses Reed and her attorneys of conspiring with the blogger known as Turtle Boy. to make, quote, personal attacks on witnesses and their family members. And Thursday, a new filing from the prosecution. It says O'Keefe's DNA was found on Reed's broken taillight, and tiny pieces of taillight found on O'Keefe's clothes are consistent with the broken pieces of plastic from Reed's SUV. Reed is scheduled to be back in court on Monday as both sides look to delay her upcoming trial. For 25 Investigates, I'm Ted Daniel.
All right, so let me go and let's just go to Ted's article on this too. All right. Hey, I'm getting a little faster at that transition. Have you noticed? People have been with YCTT a while know that that's progress. All right. Let's see if this is a size you can read it. All right. So this was the article that came out a little bit before this. Same thing. Ted Daniels, Fox 25. I know people on both sides of this case make Ted a target and have different reasons for being upset with him, but I actually think he's done a good job. He's maybe the only news. Him and Gretchen Voss are the only news people that are really covering this in any kind of in-depth way. And he did break the existence of the letters from DA Morrissey to the feds, and that was an important break. We still don't know. I had assumed, since the defense was getting copies of those, that it was the defense that leaked those letters. Defense seems to imply in their latest motion that it was the prosecution, but we don't know how Ted got those. But so this is big. All right. And we can all try to read into this stuff what we want, but let's just say, all right, so Fox 25 Investigates has also learned that the U.S. Attorney's Office for Massachusetts has turned over findings from a federal probe that involves witnesses and law enforcement in the murder trial of Reed. And then in a couple of things later, I think they mention, all right, Reed's lawyers declined comment. Now, to me, that silence, the longer it goes in, is very loud. All right. I mean, it's very loud, right? If the feds turned over evidence, now there's a protective order, so neither side is allowed to talk about what they found. But that doesn't mean they can't go out and shout from the rooftops saying there's a conspiracy, there's a cover up, this is it, it's time to drop this case. If the feds had found something like that, wouldn't they be doing that? So every minute that goes by today that you don't see that press conference, it gets less and less likely to even hold out hope that the feds are going to save the day for you guys here. And we've already crossed into the point of almost irrational religious belief on the feds, on the part of Karen Reed believing the feds were going to swoop in here and do this. It's really crossed into Looneyville a while ago, but definitely now. If you still think the feds are coming in, it might be time for a padded cell. I don't know. So unless they do it tonight or in the morning, unless somebody comes out, I mean, none of the investigators associated with the case have been suspended, put on leave, got a target letter. Nobody's been arrested. Certainly, nobody's been indicted. I mean, at what point do you still think the feds are going to come and save the day? At what point do you just give that up as a conspiracy theory? It's just crazy at some point. So let's go further through this article and see if we have anything else that's interesting. There was. These are things that we talked about yesterday, but it's good to see them from a major source. So DNA has been found on Reed's. So O'Keefe's DNA has been. Oh, I want to go back to just one more thing about that statement on the feds. So notice what they said here. You have to look at the way things are carefully worded. The findings from a federal probe that involves witnesses and law enforcement in the murder trial of Reed. All right. This is basically what I've been saying on this channel here for a week or more, is that all the feds are going to do, because they didn't find any smoking gun thing, is they're going to turn over the grand jury minutes and some interviews that they did with other witnesses that they didn't subpoena to testify. So, for instance, Lucky was subpoenaed, but then it was canceled. But notice, has turned over findings. There's no suggesting there that there's an ongoing investigation into this case. Turned over findings. Didn't say turned over what they have so far or something like that. But they only mention involves witnesses and law enforcement. You're not going to see an analysis, a statement of what they found. You're not going to see that. So there won't be a public. I mean, there should be. So maybe there will be, but I don't think it's too embarrassing for Josh Levy to come out and say they found nothing. And he has a lot of accounting to do here to get into exactly what his role was here, what his communications with the defense team was, how this investigation was predicated. According to the state, the only thing that predicated was the story told to Josh Levy, or at least to the feds anyways, by the defense. They never requested any any evidence from the state. So it's very unusual. They just were really looking into contacts that the investigators and the witnesses might have had with each other. It sounds like that's all they were looking into, because they didn't dig into any evidence. This is evidence of something at the very least highly improper, but really, and I don't know what the codes or the laws are that apply here, but something that's wrong. And this is something that an IG is going to be wanting to dig into. So I've predicted that the way this will play out is there won't be a statement after the trial. There'll be an ongoing IG investigation, and by the ethics office, that kind of thing takes a couple of years. They'll slow walk it, and Josh Levy, 6 months from now, will announce that he's leaving to go back to his old job at Ropes and Gray. So whatever ambitions that he had, and the reason he left the elite firm of Ropes and Gray to go join the U.S. Attorney's Office, and maybe you want to be a judge, maybe you want to be maybe dream to be in the U.S. Attorney. I think those dreams are out the door, unless they actually do swoop in and arrest everybody tomorrow. So what the guys do like that when they're embarrassed, they go back to their $1 million a year jobs. It's pretty nice. So that's what'll happen. There won't be any, and the report will come out a couple of years from now, and no one will pay attention. That's how they handle things. That's how the feds deal with things. So it's pretty good to be a fed sometimes. All right. So John O'Keefe's DNA was found on Karen's broken taillight. Now, if you're conspiracy mining, you say, well, that was planted. I don't really, what can you say? There's an awful lot of planting and a very elaborate scheme here to do this stuff. The testing found that the tiny pieces of microscopic taillight pieces, little broken fragments that were in John's clothing, they're consistent with what's from Reed's taillight. So how close the match is, I don't know. I mean, does that mean, there's probably a certain model. So it doesn't mean there's probably no way to prove that those pieces are actually from that taillight, but they're from pieces that Lexus uses. So similar, but I don't know how common, is that something that could be matched to 1% of cars that are out there, or 60% of cars? I have no idea. But it seems, again, are the troopers out there planting microscopic pieces of taillight inside John's clothing? Maybe, right? But it's just a lot of things that they had to do here, and you have to buy into all of them in order for it to be a conspiracy. And if there isn't a conspiracy, Karen's guilty. There's no possibility that somebody else driving on the road did it. So either Karen did it, or there was a cover-up. So it long ago became irrational to believe in the possibility of the cover-up, but plenty of good, smart people did. So I'm not trying to insult them. I think maybe not everybody has the same time to dig into the evidence, but there's also a powerful need to believe in this theory for some reason. I don't know why. I guess it's part of it, the mistrust of authority that we all have and that I share. I have a lot of mistrust of authority too. I've seen a lot of shady things go on with Fed cops, state cops, prosecutors. I've seen enough of it. So nobody gets a benefit of the doubt for me. Yes, I think most cops are good cops doing their job. Absolutely. But you don't get the benefit of the doubt. I mean, there's enough stuff that's going on in life that has to be proven. So it's just this. You have to follow the actual evidence, and that's where I turn this summer And really, we've talked about it. I'm not going to go into it at length, but the 227 search, if that was real, there's a cover up. If it's not, now you start looking at all the other evidence. And once I realized that that was disputed, and now it's at this point, I don't even know if it's disputed anymore. I mean, I really would be shocked if the defense puts Rich Green on the stand and he tries to argue that Jen searched for how long to die in the cold at 227. I'd be shocked. I mean, Celebrite designed the software, and their senior analyst is going to come out and say that that didn't happen. But meanwhile, the defense is still putting that in the documents as though it did, which should be kind of something that you take from that and say, okay, now everything else we're seeing in the document, like the motion for dismissal, you have to take it with a grain of salt because there's so much stuff that they put in there that is bullshit. For instance, the gap in the library video, there's no gap. The non-human DNA and stuff, well, the non-human hair, although they've taken that out. There's so much bullshit in there. Do you have to realize what you're looking at? This is what goes on in a murder case with a high-priced defense team. They're hired to make shit up because and it's a challenge to do that when your client is actually guilty. Now you have to kind of be creative, and that's what they're doing. These defense documents are master classes in creative writing. That's all they are. I'm a writer. I recognize that stuff. I love it. It's fun to go and take little bits of things and then build them into a story. That's what they're doing. If I didn't have a conscience, I'd love to go work for them and do that, but I don't like the idea of smearing innocent people. So that's my handicap. That's not something that handicaps these guys. That's not something that bothers Yannetti. That's not something that bothers Alan Jackson. If they want to sue me for saying that, people are always saying that they're going to sue. Have at it, because it's the truth. You can't sue people for the truth. And there's just too many There's too many examples of it here. Even just looking through the evidence on Scanlon, these guys knew. Well, Yannetti knew that Scanlon didn't have any evidence. They were the ones that planted in Scanlon the idea that Colin Albert was a suspect here. That was from Yannetti and the other private investigator that he had. And it wasn't based on evidence. It was based on them trying to come up with this third party culprit theory. And so they put this on the Scanlon, and then hoping that becomes something that'll snowball and turn into something. And that may have even been something that they went to the feds with, which is, I think there'll be charges if they went to the feds and said, we got a guy, Scanlon, who knows the people involved and who knows something happened in the house. If that turns out to be not true, I don't see how there aren't charges against Yannetti. You can't go and lie to the U.S. Attorney's Office. So, I mean, they're lawyers, so they're always going to cover themselves with shady kind of language and stuff like that. But, I don't know. That's going to be something that could get big here. But I don't think they're going to want to do this. They're not going to want to do any sanctions against Yannetti and Jackson until after the trial. But even then, if they do it then that might be the grounds for Karen trying to get a new trial. So this probably is going to be something that drags on for the rest of our lives. So, which kind of stinks. But I don't think it'll completely drag on. I think that there's going to be a trial, probably in March, maybe early April. And actually, I really don't think there's going to be a trial. I think there's going to be a plea deal. But if there's not a plea deal, there'll be a trial. So we'll see. But then there'll be appeals, and that's where it just goes on forever. Maybe possibly on some appeal. For instance, if her lawyers are accused eventually for improper conduct, then Karen could use that as a basis for a new trial, right? Maybe. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. I just play one on YouTube. But it's possible, right? So it seems like this case doesn't want to ever go away. So that's just a feeling. So let's look through so the other thing about Scanlon you have to know. So I first started hearing about Scanlon, I think it was in May, and it was from a source, good guy, correctional officer in Suffolk County, someone who knew Scanlon, had been in it, used to work with him about 10 years before, also someone who went to school with Brian Albert. This was someone who first alerted me to the Karen Read conspiracy, and he was. I haven't spoken to him recently, but he was someone that believed in it. Like I say, and he's a good guy, smart guy, and he had said that when he went to school with Brian, Brian was a good kid, but he believed the conspiracy just because he hadn't seen Brian in many years, and he was a turtle guy, and so he that's the story that was pitched to him, on day one on April 18th was convincing. And you could see why when you start to look at all the various elements of it that were carefully put together, not by Turtle Boy, but by Alan Jackson and Yannetti and Karen, really. But so he also said that Scanlon was not the kind of guy that would lie. He said Scanlon's not the kind of guy that would. I think the way he said it to me, he was surprised that Scanlon would insert himself into something. He's kind of a lay low kind of guy, but if push comes to shove, he's never going to lie. He's never going to make a false statement. So that was his opinion, anyways. And he believed this, but he believed that Scanlon had the goods. He believed Scanlon had information, and we now know that Scanlon, if he's telling the truth, did not. We're not sure if he testified before the federal grand jury. The state had some pretty specific language from him, whether that was just from interviewing him or whether he's testified somewhere. Who knows? Maybe that's just from them interviewing him and him signing some statements. I don't know. So just look through the article and see if there's anything else interesting here, and then we'll move on. A source says that the DA's office and Reed's attorneys now, okay, so just to repeat this, a source, this is Ted Daniels, a source says that the Norfolk District Attorney's Office and Reed's attorneys now know what the feds have, but they are prohibited from sharing those documents with the public. So, they're not prohibited from coming out and making a statement. Aha, this is it. You need to drop these charges. Well, it's 7:52 right now. As of this moment, somebody call me if they've had that press conference and I missed it. So looks like this story came out at 5:08. That's the story, but we don't know how long it's been since both sides had these documents, this material from the feds. What did they get it yesterday? Did they get it sometime today? I don't know, but they've certainly had time. So let me check in chat. So has anybody seen while I'm on here that Yannetti has held a press conference, guys? Is anybody seeing anything like that? Just let me look in chat real now, quick. Is anything out there from the Fed, from Yannetti, guys? Has Yannetti made an announcement that the feds proved? No. So no press conference. Doesn't that, Jeff? I know you've I say this respectfully. You're leaning towards believing in there's a cover up, right? So does it mean anything to you that Yannetti's not coming out and making a big announcement and saying that's it? Do you think that that's meaningful? Or do you think they'd wait till the morning? Just curious what you think about that. So it's not meaningful to you. Okay. Do you think that they'd wait till the morning, or you think they'd wait till Monday and make their big presentation in court? Because again, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't work for the federal government, at least not that I can tell you. They have to put out a statement in the morning. So they have to. Who has to? The Yannetti does? Jay James says, does the state being quiet concern me? No, not at all. Why would they say anything? There's no reason for them to say anything. I would think that, again, the same thing. The state, if they found massive evidence of a cover-up came from the feds, they'd have to drop the cases. But they'd have to drop the charges. But they would not be in as, and they may do theirs in the morning but for Karen, for Karen's team, you got a client that's sitting waiting to go on trial for murder. So you don't wait, you come right out. If I was her lawyers, and I got information from the feds, as soon as I got it, as soon as it was like sure, I would have a press conference and I would you'd be vague, because you're not there's a protective order. You can't say what's in it, but you say, look, this is it. The evidence is now in, and it's time. The state has to do the right thing and drop the charges here. So just checking through to see if you guys have anything, other opinions on this. Jay James, nothing from the state, but they're not allowed to have the press conference like the defense can. Yes, exactly. Good point, Coffee. Coffee Kristen. That's probably not your real name, but I like it. That's a great name. Slathering says people say they want justice, but questioning and actually finding out the truth would be justice. Exactly. We didn't know where this was going to go on social media, but back in April when this case broke, knowing that Turtle Boy didn't really do social media other than his blog and YouTube, I made a Reddit group because for some of the other cases, the Reddit becomes the main vehicle. And I thought it was because you could post documents there. And I thought it would be a good place for people to go to discuss the case. And I called it Justice for John O'Keefe, or I forget. I called it Justice for John and Karen, I think. But what I wasn't saying to people, but what I knew all along was justice can also mean conviction. That's justice, right? If Karen did it and then justice would be getting convicted. So justice means just getting the truth out there, So, all right. So let's get to, let me see if I can get this to open here where you can see it. I want to open up. This is from the September. All right. Let's see if this opens with the highlights so I can show it to you. Well, I guess it's just as good to read it. All right. So let me read it to you. All right. So this is in September. All right. This is a prosecution document where they added something that we hadn't seen before. And this was about the vehicle data. So the state's expert, part of the accident reconstruction, the evidence team. All right. So subsequently, an extensive collision reconstruction was conducted, which included the retrieval and review of data created and stored by the Lexus safety system. That's the black box, including data of the vehicle's speed, distance of travel, triggering events, and the opening angle of the acceleration pedal. So that's all stuff like the angle of the pedal, triggering events. That's all stuff that would only be on the black box. There's all kinds of information in your car, and it's very difficult to find. It's because technology is changing. So I was able to find examples of black box reports online, but it's changed a lot. In fact, so now pretty much all vehicles come with a GPS chip in them. But where is that information stored? Is it stored? So the best I could find on research today was that the GPS data from the car is stored, but I can't be certain about that. So we'll see from the state. So I also looked up, is there a way to turn that off? The GPS device is typically kept it's a chip. So the GPS is a chip that has one-way communication. It picks up signals from the satellite, and it doesn't send out any signals. You have that in all phones now, in all your smartphones, and you have it in almost all cars now, in a new car. So it's typically kept in the wheel well, I guess, but there's different places it could be. So it's not that easy to remove. However, you can go into the vehicle, into the systems and turn it off. I don't know if there's a way to go in and delete the data. I have no indication. So I don't know. With Karen's car, well, all right, let me get back to finishing the statement, and then we'll go over that. So again, retrieval and review of the data created and stored by the Lexus safety system, including data of the vehicle's speed, distance of travel, triggering events. There's that word, triggering events, and the opening angle of the accelerator pedal. The crash reconstructionist opined, and keep in mind, this crash reconstructionist is not someone that works for the state police. It's someone that works for Lexus, because what these black boxes are put in your vehicle for is not to be used in criminal cases. The black box was invented for cars, or put in cars, for the purpose of sending data back to the manufacturer so they can make the vehicles more safety. And that's why it's called what it is, which is the Lexus safety systems, because this is Lexus. But that's what the purpose of the black box is, because a lot of people think it might be similar to a plane, but it's not really to be used. It's not designed with the intention of being used in criminal cases, though obviously it is now. So the crash reconstructionist opined, that the vehicle traveled in reverse for approximately 62 feet before striking the victim at a possible impact speed of 24.2 miles an hour. Post impact with the victim, the defendant's vehicle continued in reverse before leaving the scene. Now, we recently heard from Yannetti in one of their motions or oppositions, I forget which, but it was just a few weeks ago, that they say the EVD, so the black box data system, showed no event. And I don't really understand how to square that with this here, where according to the Lexus expert here, it talks specifically about triggering events. Now, I did a lot of research into black boxes this summer, and it was difficult to find really good information. I finally found a really good article by a defense attorney that was basically his opinion was that these things shouldn't be used because they were unreliable, and he gave his different reasons. Keep in mind, he's a defense attorney, and he was writing that for a reason. But that was 10 years ago. So I don't know what's changed in that time. About these are much more. There's more chips in a car, and there's more potentially ways to store data. I don't know. So what he was saying, that the way, and I believe other things I saw, the way they used to work, now I don't know if it's changed, is that you have all these data streams that are coming from various sensors in the vehicle, and they reach the black box, and the black box is storing, so the acceleration, the brakes, and all that different stuff, the speed of the vehicle, and that kind of thing. And they're storing all that stuff, but it doesn't store. It's not like this is big hard drive in your computer that's storing all massive amounts of this stuff. So what happens is it just keeps getting rewritten over, unless it makes a record. And the only what triggers it to make a record of something is a triggering event, a collision. And now what I had seen back then was only a collision of over 5 miles an hour. But every time there's a collision of over 5 miles an hour, it takes a snapshot of that data. I think it was like, say, 30 seconds before the collision and 30 seconds after. And it stores that in a record. And it only stores up to 5 of those. Now, again, maybe these modern systems store more. So I'm not sure what Yannetti's talking about. So you have to be so careful with these people because they're so tricky with their non-human hairs and their non-existent gaps in the library video. Now, on December 1st, there's another part of the vehicle that has data, and this was the entertainment system. And the entertainment system was something that the state had trouble getting a report on because the companies that deal with that hadn't really developed software that could read, I guess, in Karen's particular entertainment system. So there was a problem with that. And then, so they were and the other issue with it is that these things are very sensitive. And so once you remove it from a power source, it can be destroyed. And when you read it, I think you can only read it once. Again, I'm not a data guy, so this is just what I could find out. The entertainment system, one of the things the defense had put in their thing as being suspicious is that by the time they got to look at the Lexus vehicle, the entertainment system had already been removed. Aha. But again, my amateur analysis of that is that they needed to hook it up to a battery, or you could lose that data. So I think it was something like that, where it was removed for that reason and hooked up to a battery to keep to make sure that the data was not lost. But the actual reading of that data, no attempt was made until December 1st, when both sides could get their experts there to do it. And then you get a one-time reading of it. Now, we haven't had any reporting of that. We don't know if anything useful came of that. I don't even know what type of information comes from that. Maybe it just tells you what kind of music you were listening to that night. I don't know what's in, these entertainment systems now. When you go in your car, they're pretty sophisticated. You've got maps hooked up to them, right? Like Google Maps or whatever that you can plug into your Waze or just your Google Maps in order to you got navigation maps. There's a lot of stuff in the entertainment system now or connected to it. So is there useful information in that? Do they have timestamps and things like that? I don't know. So what exactly is Unetti talking about when he said there was no event? And yet we look back at this here, and according to the official Lexus data, there was distance of triggering events. So I don't really understand how they would even have this information that they've put together, that she went 62 feet and was traveling at 24.2 miles per hour. I don't know how you could have all that without an accident. But again, you could reason it through, though. If you have a clean EVD, you got the data report from the vehicle, and that data shows that vehicle was not in a collision. Well, if that was it, that's game over for the prosecution. And but see, the fact that the prosecution has had that data for some time and they have not dropped the charges, to me is indicative that Unetti is not properly representing here, just like with the non-human hair and the library gap. So that's how I read it. Now, I could be wrong, but probably what will happen is you'll get to a trial, and just like as we saw with 227 and deletions and stair walking and stuff like that, you'll get these experts that dispute something. And so will it leave the jury confused? Will it convince the jury? It's hard to say. And if you have enough of a convincing expert on the defense's side, it might be enough to confuse the jury a little bit, but they aren't going to dismiss it based on this unless there was really clear evidence that there was no collision, enough for them to say what's going on. Then or unless you see enough evidence that's presented to the jury that the prosecution has been completely unreliable and uncredible in the things that they're arguing, then I don't think you're going to see the jury dismiss this in their minds. I don't think it's going to establish much reasonable doubt based on that alone. But it'll be interesting to really see, this. And again, if anybody wants this document that they can look at themselves, just email me at leitskev, LEITSKEV @gmail.com. And I'd be happy to send it to you. This came out this motion was in regards to Brian Albert's phone. So this was a Commonwealth opposition to that. Something to think about too, while we're on the topic of the phone. Let's get this guy off here. While we're on the topic of the phone, of Brian's phone, one of the things that people in the Turtle crowd were very upset about back then was why is the prosecution arguing so definitively to try to prevent Karen's team from getting Brian's phone? Well, and the way it was presented to us was that, wow, the prosecution is acting as Brian's defense lawyer. That's so wrong. But no, I think another way to look at it is that the prosecution was defending your privacy rights and my privacy rights, all of our rights. You can't just let defense teams go on fishing expeditions to possibly find something they can use. So I don't think it's unusual or improper at all that the prosecution was defending everybody's rights. And that's what they're going to do in every one of those things. So just something to think just something to keep in mind. I want to also talk to you guys. I don't normally like to, I believe in freedom of speech, even if you're an idiot. All right. Everybody's got a right. Hey, look, I have a right to say idiotic things too. Right. But I have to point out that this Tom CPU, what he's doing makes him a particular breed of scumbag. And decent people should not be supporting him with views. And I don't like saying that. He's an older guy, he's a little guy. And yeah, he's a little obnoxious, and the things he says aren't too bright, but that's his right. But he's chasing around people in Canton trying to catch smear videos. He does it all day. And so you look at someone, particularly, he's been, this is what word had reached me today that he's been chasing around Colin, trying to get, and what's Colin, 19-year-old kid who's been falsely smeared as a murderer when the evidence that both sides have, Karen's side has this evidence, it's in discovery. They know that Colin was not in the house. They know it. Okay. You're not going to see them argue that in trial because they have the same data that shows that Colin was not in the house. All right. They have it, yet they don't mind smearing people. But in addition to them smearing people, this guy, Tom, is chasing this kid around, trying to get some kind of video. And then we saw him outside of court last week chasing Grant around and yelling obscenities. That doesn't even resemble journalism. That's a scumbag. All right. And if you give that guy a view, you're contributing to that behavior. And no matter how entertaining it might seem, because I know some of the people that I talk to almost enjoy watching the really sketchy shows because it's kind of entertainment value to just watch this guy make an ass of himself or something like that. But what he does is not just if you want to make an ass of yourself, that's fine. Hey, I do it plenty of times. But what he's doing is damaging to people, and it's wrong. And giving him that 5 minutes of view or a half hour of view, even if you're not subscribing, you're helping him. You're helping the algorithm, just sending the algorithm his way. And that's what we're seeing here is what we really want in the public is to start controlling or start limiting some of this more scumbaggy type behavior that is going on with several of the grifters in this case. But we don't want the state to have to do it because we don't want a heavy-handed state that's going around, indicting people for taking videos. We don't want that. We don't want to live in that. We want to protect our freedoms. So in order to help protect our freedoms, our First Amendment rights, it will be helpful if we stop supporting scumbags. And it's important. It's a small thing that we all can do. But anybody that's out there really, they're not chasing after the truth. They're trying to smear people. They're trying to create entertainment with videos like that or obnoxious phone calls. Don't support it. Even if you say you're against it, but you go and you watch it because you get some kind of pleasure from hate watching. I get it. But the best way is to just ignore these people so they'll go away. That's the only way to make them go away. All right. Tomorrow night, I'm going to be on my channel with my friend and author Dave, because Dave has a book out. Sorry, All right, just getting a couple of questions. All right, so yeah, I'm going to look for these now. A couple of questions will come in chat, and I'll highlight them in chat. Anyway, so tomorrow I will have on Dave McGrath, who is a good friend and an author. His first book out is has done very well, and that's kind of around the time that I met him. He told me he had a book out, and I enjoyed reading it. And he did a lot of original research that no one else has done in that book. Well, he's got a second book coming out. It was supposed to come out in the fall, was delayed, and now you can pre-order it starting tomorrow. So he's going to come on the show and we're going to talk about it. So that's my friend Dave McGrath. So I hope you guys will join us. And I think when you see as Dave talks about these other cases, you're going to appreciate it, you know. See, Ranger Joe says scumbags like me. See, I don't do any of that. I'm not taking videos of anybody. See, your reason for calling me a scumbag is because I'm not buying into your pet conspiracy theory, or because you like watching this scumbag behavior that some of these guys do. And so you don't like that I'm criticizing it. But there you go. I posted on Twitter today, what is in the water in this state? Did the zombie apocalypse come to Massachusetts sometime a couple years ago and I missed it? We missed it. And so they're out there walking among us, because there seems to be a real wave of stupidity that is spread around. And I'm sorry, I can't help it. And what went wrong? Or are we like certain parts of the country that our local pool has become isolated for too long, and we start to kind of develop flaws where we become kind of stupid? I don't know what's going on here. Like, I just don't understand some of the analysis, but there's going to be more to come out on Keith on TB tomorrow morning. Check out your news. There's going to be more. That's all I can say. But all right, I'm looking for a question that Tom had said will come, and then we'll get back to some of the other things. Scott Robinson, hi. Scott's always been a good, respectful person in chat. Scott says, I'll put it up on the screen. Kevin, how does the protection order on these new findings work? Will they only talk about this stuff in very general terms Monday? That's a great question. And unfortunately, I never went to law school. But we can talk about it and think about it, because the law is generally, you can think it through with common sense, right? So I would think, yes, they can absolutely talk about that in the hearing. I don't think the protective order would apply to that, but I don't know. That's a fan. Give this guy 4 stars. That's what's the most stars we can give? That's a fantastic question. Anybody have an answer to that? Is Grant watching? Grant's got some legal training. I don't know, but that's Kate. Is you out there? Do you have an answer to that? Can that be talked about in court? I think maybe it can, but I'm not sure. We've already seen them do that quite a bit, but we talked about their messages from the feds. Now those weren't under protective order though. So that's a really good question. I think they can. I'm going to go with yes. I'm going to go with it's probably in the protective order that would be an exception, that you can talk about this stuff in court. Yeah, absolutely. Because if the feds were going to give information and they were going to use that as a basis for arguing for dismissal, they would have to be able to talk about it. And so I would think that would be included in the protective order, because the protective order was the language that they had to agree to was why things got delayed a few days. And so that's probably the haggling that was going back and forth, if that makes sense. I'm still looking for the questions from Tom. Did I miss it? Tom, all right, there it is. First question. Do you believe, I'm not sure who this is originally from, Tom is passing this on. Kevin, first question, do you believe that the prosecution has a plausible recreation of the Lexus killing John? I am told it does. Despite what people think, I don't want any privileged information, and no one offers me any. There's nothing that goes on. Whatever connections that I have, nobody crosses the line, and I don't try to encourage them to. And nobody wants to jeopardize the case. Nobody wants to get anybody in trouble. And that's just the truth. We don't do that. Now, sometimes I get information that comes from other sources, but if I don't know where it's from, I can't really go with it, so I don't. But that was a question that I specifically got to them. Don't tell me what the reconstruction is, but does the state have a plausible accident reconstruction? And the answer was definitively yes, something they're very confident in. So no idea what's in it. No idea. You've seen some of my speculations. A little bit on that. So I mentioned this a little bit the other night, and I'm thinking about it some more today. So it's always kind of stumped people, Jen McCabe's testimony. So John's phone stopped moving at 12:32. That's presumably the time he was killed. At 12:31, so a minute before that, Jen had texted him, hello. In other words, where are you? Because they're supposed to meet there. And then her testimony, no, she texted him again at 12:40 and at 12:45. Those were her last two texts. And sometime after the 12:31 text, at least according to her memory, that's when she saw Karen pull forward to the edge of the property. Now, everybody looked at this and said, that doesn't seem to match the timeline, right? So they arrived initially at the same time as the truck that Ryan Nagel was in at about 12:24, 12:25. And the truck let Karen's had the right of way. So they pulled up in the truck. So Karen and John pulled up in front of the driveway, more or less, and the truck pulled up behind them. But they didn't sit in they didn't want to block the driveway or whatever. So shortly after that, they pulled up to the far edge of the property. Which is also interesting too. When you look at it's a pretty long stretch of property there. So why would they pull all the way to the edge? Maybe they were just trying to make sure there was more parking space for other people. So they could have been just being generous. But also you could wonder, were they arguing and about whether to stay or not? And John finally said, look, pull over. But I don't know. That's all speculative. We don't know. So what time did they pull forward? It probably was 12:25, maybe 12:26, in that range. Now, so keep it. So you got 12:25, they arrive. A little after that, they pull forward. 12:32, John, presumably that's when he struck. What happens in those 5, 6 minutes, 7 minutes? Meanwhile, Jen texts at 12:31, right before John's presumably gets struck. Then after that is when she observes him, Karen, moving forward in the vehicle to the edge of the property, right? So what I think happened was we're mixing up these two things when they did that. And what I think happened was that Karen pulled forward. A few minutes later, after Ryan Nagel's sister came out and said, we're staying, they left. They observed the interior lights on. So John was probably either just in the process of getting out, or maybe he just got out and he was standing there with the door open and he was still arguing with Karen, something like that. But the door must have been open. Why didn't Nagel see John? Well, it's dark, very dark location right there, no street light. And so if John is standing, and especially if John happened to be just getting out as these guys are pulling up, and remember, they're not paying attention. They're in the car, the street. I don't think 3 people in the truck. They're probably young guys, as young people. They're probably out smoking and drinking and just whatever. Not really paying attention to what's going on in that truck on the side of the road. So John was probably outside of the truck at that point, and with no light on, he wasn't seen. Not long after, now maybe right after that, or maybe a couple minutes after that. There's no way of knowing the exact time. John finally closes his door, gets out, and starts to walk towards the house. Karen pulls off, but in a rage, she changes her mind, puts it in reverse, floors it, and goes back. I personally think that what happened was John had his cocktail glass in the right hand. and his phone in his jeans in the right pocket. When Jen texted him at 12:31, he reached down to grab it with his left hand because his drink was in his right hand. And if anybody's ever tried to pull a phone out of your right pocket with your left hand, there's a good chance you're going to drop it. And he dropped it, bent over to pick it up, and that's when Karen clipped him. She continued down to further down the property, either in front of the driveway. I'm told Higgins' car might have been parked there at that time. So maybe she just pulled alongside Higgins' car, or, however exactly it went. And she sat there catching her breath like, oh my God, what just happened? And then pulled forward to see what happened to John. And I think that maybe that's when Jen looked out the window. So Jen looked out the window. It could have been anywhere from 12:32 to 12:34, and happened to see Jen pulling forward. And we're mixing that up with the other time that she moved forward when she first arrived. It's just a theory. I don't know, so people can debate it. Kevin, did you see where Tom followed Kate to court a few weeks ago and then planted a $100 bill beside her car for when she came out? She didn't see it and she didn't take it. I'm surprised Tom had a $100 bill. Was that real? But yeah, that's shady. I mean, what are you doing here? What are you doing? I can tell you, if you put a $100 bill besides my car and I see it, I'm going to take it. And you ain't getting it back. You ain't getting it back. So, but yeah, what is the purpose of Tom's CPU? To make a YouTube channel and just go around and do scuzzy things? Is that the idea? Because he's not smart enough to have a discussion about the case, so he has no choice but to do scuzzy things. Do people want to follow that? Do you want to support that? I don't know. Keith Allen says the U.S. attorney has given both attorneys the sealed documents today. Yeah. And there has been no press conference by Yannetti saying my client is innocent, let her go. There's been no black helicopters swooping in to make arrests. No troopers have been suspended or put on leave. How long can you possibly cling to this theory? There was actually someone with a popular post on Twitter today that said the feds held off on the arrest. They're going to arrest everybody tomorrow. And the reason they held off was so that Turtle Boy could get out of jail and witness it. So the people, these turtle riders, actually believe that the feds are sitting there deciding when they're going to make arrests based on Turtle Boy getting out of jail. That's Kool-Aid level shit, guys. That is Kool-Aid level shit that's going on in this case. Ranger Joe is very upset. I'm sorry. It's only going to get worse for you, brother. It's only going to get worse. Coffee. Okay. This is at least a good point. They cannot discuss anything under protective order. No, they can't discuss it in details, but they can still hold a press conference and say, look, we now know for sure that our client is innocent and it's time to drop the charges. That's not a violation of the protective order. You're not reporting anything about what's in the protective order. So, and nobody, if that information showed that there was a cover-up, nobody would ever charge the defense team with violating the protective order for just simply coming out and saying, this is it. Our client is innocent. The evidence here, and it's time to stop the charade. Nobody would ever charge them with a crime. Keith Allen, curious to know if you think Karen is guilty. Yep, absolutely. The evidence is just too overpowering. I didn't this summer. There was an evolution, but as you looked over the evidence, it just was logic, and that's all. I've never been to Ken. I've never met anybody involved. I've talked to some of the witnesses on the phone, and that's it. But I'm not on anybody's side. Secretly, it'd be great for me personally if tomorrow the feds arrest everybody, because then I get to go do my one last show and say, I'm sorry, I'm an idiot, I'm a zombie too. And then I get to go back on work on things that I'm getting behind on that I have a lot more fun doing. I'm a screenwriter, and I have some stuff going on, and there's a point if I have something right now that's a big company is interested in, you don't want to get too optimistic about things like that. But if they buy it, you're not going to see me much again because I'm going to be way too busy with screenwriting projects that have nothing to do with Karen Reid or true crime. So, anyways, but that's Caitlin says, Ranger, go watch the Glare. He's more your speed. He's on tonight. Oh, okay. All right. The Glare is grifting tonight. The Tennessee Grifter. I don't watch that show. I watched it once when I was never heard of him, but I was alerted. Actually, it was interesting that day when he was doing his first reaction video on me. Earlier in the day on Twitter, I had seen this thing, The Glare. I didn't even know that it was a YouTube channel. And he said that funny thing about this case, it seems like only the people in the Free Karen Reid movement have read the documents. And I was like, what? I don't know where you get that because it doesn't seem like any of them have read the documents with the exception of Olivia. I don't see any of them else showing any signs of read. I don't see that from Sean or Aiden. I don't see any signs or any indications that any of them have read the documents. But certainly I would say most people don't want to have time or want to read the documents. And so a handful of people on both sides do. But it was a strange thing. And I kind of said that and didn't even say it in like a combative way. And he blocked me. And then I heard his name later on. People were in that day, people are messaging me. He's doing a reaction video to him. I'm like, okay, I don't know what it was. I go on there and he was just kind I said, well, if you have any questions, I'm willing to come on your show. But he didn't want that. Aiden was there in the audience and about 700 turtle riders, and they were all there. He gets more views when he does a reaction video on me because these zombies, otherwise known as turtle riders, love to come in and they think, they think it's sport to say, oh, Kevin sucks. He's a coward and this and that. It's like, it's a badge of honor because they're so dumb. But this guy is, he's was a coward because he hadn't even watched the video yet. And I'm like, hey, you don't have to do a reaction video. You can have me on. Send me the link. And he's like, all right, I hear you. I see you. You'll get a chance to come on the show sometime, which of course that was never the case. He never reached out to me. And then he was saying later that I had blocked him, but it turns out it wasn't the case. He had blocked me. And he just was pandering to the crowd the entire time. And it was mindless. But I hope Kevin answers about his comment about BT being held. Hey, I have friends that are psychic mediums, and they occasionally report things. Has Higgins flipped? Nope, not that I know of. And we finally found out from the state what was going on. Karen, 3 weeks before John, or a couple weeks before John had died, Higgins was at John's house for the Patriots football game, and Karen said, "Let me walk you out." Took him to the garage and planted a kiss on his lips, and Higgins couldn't resist that. Why was Karen doing this? She started an affair with him. Why? Because she was mad at John because she thought John was flirting when they were on vacation the week before. So there you go. Then why give it out? I'm not sure what you're talking about, but you may be talking about, hey, I'm just, like I said, sometimes I'm friends with some psychic mediums. They've come on the channel. I don't believe in psychic abilities, but if they prove correct, they prove correct. Coffee Kristen, Kevin, they can talk about anything that's not specifically prohibited by the protective order, but anything else cannot be argued in open. Oh, thank you. So actually, you know the answer to this. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Coffee. So Coffee Kristen answers the question that somebody had about what the sides can talk about in court. And she says that, let's put this up there so everybody can see it because it was a good answer. And thank you. This is why we want intelligent people here seeking answers to work together towards improving things that we don't know about. They can talk about anything that's not specifically prohibited by the protective order, but anything else cannot be argued in open court. Oh, in my opinion, she said, though. Okay, so maybe she doesn't know. I mean, they're not, I mean, I don't know, because the thing is, Kristen, they're not allowed to talk about In the protective order, it will say they won't be able to talk, for instance, about grand jury testimony, federal grand jury testimony. But they're going to have to talk about that in court if they're going to raise it for a motion to dismiss. So I do think they're going to talk about that if there's anything relevant in it. Tom tries to be cool in TB's eyes. It's so sad. It's sad how TB as a whole. It's really not just him. Thousands of people around the state that would pretty much sell their soul just to give this cult leader, whose only power is a mob. And the power of that mob comes from the ability to get embarrassing information on other people and smear them and make them worry that they're going to smear you and destroy you and your family. That's the key to his power. And it's amazing how many people will do anything to prove themselves for that. Frank Perry for the contribution. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and it's very much appreciated. The small donations, especially because to me, I'm like, hey, you're reaching out and you're saying I appreciate it, and you're working hard, and we support you. So thank you. Tom is asking a second question. Again, I'm not sure. I can't say more about the TB stuff. I'm sorry. But there are sometimes that I'm able to give you a little insight into something here, and I can't tell you details or I can't tell you sources, and you just got to live with it. Someone just sent me a photo. We'll see if it's anything relevant to the case. This is about the medical examiner. Anyways, these Facebook notes are driving me. Kristen, if you're listening to the show, do me a favor, hold off on more messages until we're done. Just because all this beeping is very distracting. So now I'm going to have to turn the silencer off. Anyways, Kathy says Jeff Lynn. All right, so I'm not sure what that's about. Jay James, he paid attention enough to see the lights, the interior lights, to tend to hand position, but wasn't paying attention. Yeah, because he's not paying attention. You glance and you see someone standing there, sitting there with their hands like that, and you see it because the interior lights are on. That's not the same as you're driving by, taking a long look and getting notes about everything that's going on. And then because you have no reason to think there's anything unusual going on, your memory processes it overnight. And the next day someone says, did you see anything? And that's the only image that's stuck out in your mind. Okay. K-Pick has a good question. If he's walking up to the house, how do you end up 12 feet from the street? You're not even making sense in your opinion. Okay. Well, the GPS shows he got out of the car at the edge of the property and never went very far at all. So whether she hit him before he walked long, or whether he took a leak in the bushes, or whether he stopped to talk to someone on the phone or something like that, he didn't get very far. But he did end up 12 feet off the street. Now, I assume that's from the impact. Okay, if you look at where he ended up, let me get you, I have a picture here. Hold on one second and I will get you a picture of that. It really gives you a good sense. There's a very good picture also, even better one inside Gretchen Voss's article. And Gretchen does some really good work. So I hope you guys support her and check out her journalism. She really dug deeply into this story. All right. Let's pull this picture up. All right, let's see if I can make this bigger for you. All right, there you go. All right, so He was found 12 feet from the street. Now, what would you say? You see the fire. He was up in the area of it's somewhere around between, I'd say between the flagpole and the fire hydrant, or possibly between the fire hydrant and, if you look to the left of the fire hydrant, is an electrical box. I'm not sure exactly where. Somewhere in that area. This is also shows why it would have been. It explains why he was not seen. There's no light, no street light there, and people walking by, driving by would have a hard time seeing if he was even just covered in a dusting of snow. It's dark and he's covered in a little snow. He's going to blend in. That part of the lawn is mulch. I've seen other pictures that show bushes there. And so that could have possibly, if he hit some bushes, that would possibly explain the arm. But 12 feet is pretty far off the street. So, and you might say, well, wow, how could he end up 12 feet? But I put a link to an article that had nothing to do with this case, where this teenage girl was flung from her car in an accident and ended up high up on a power line. Now, the car was not, I don't know the speed of the car in that case, but when I saw the road, let's say maybe it was 30, 35, 40 miles an hour. She spun out of control and she hit the utility pole, and the force of that threw her so high in the air. This was a high, and it was in a flat area, so it's not like she was on some kind of a cliff or something. No, it just flew. It threw her straight up in the air, and she landed on this power line. She lived, but it took hours to get her down. There was some pictures of her up there, and the fire department trying to get her down. Unfortunately, she lost a leg. Her arm had also been severed in the accident and held by she was hanging on by that arm and by a thin part of skin. Unfortunately, it didn't break and she didn't fall, and they were able to save the arm. But it shows that these accidents really, they get some, they really do get some, when you get a high speed and big objects like that, it does a lot of things to the human body. So to me, a vehicle, Karen's car, going at 24 miles an hour and clipping John in some part of his body would be more than enough to send him 12 feet back. So it's not really surprising at all. But, this is, to us regular citizens, maybe I would have been surprised about that a year ago. It's more you look into this stuff now and you think about it, right? That's why I think these cases are interesting for the public to look at, because we all learn. But for people that are cops and that do hit and runs or accidents and stuff like that, they see strange things like that all the time. Sometimes someone is thrown from a car and ends up in a tree and they don't find them. I mean, there's an awful lot of energy that goes into an accident like that. And that also could be the reason that would explain why the taillight, which is pretty strong, breaks. Even perhaps could a cocktail glass do that? I don't know, but I won't dismiss it, because normally a cocktail glass would not be able to break a taillight. But if the taillight is on a 2-ton vehicle going at 24 miles an hour, that might change it. Or could John's head have done that? My theory has always been that he was bent down, it clipped him in the head, and that sent him back. But I don't know. Did he stagger back? I don't think so. I think he was probably rendered unconscious instantly, but I don't know. So the state will know, Sailboat James thank you for the $10 contribution. Much appreciated. And screw the critics. Kevin is balanced and reasonable in coverage. Thank you, Sailboat. I mean, I'm trying. That's all you can do, is try to be balanced. Was the broken cocktail flask found in the street or on the lawn? That's from Wicked Sight. It's Wicked Sight. The broken cocktail glass was found where he was. And the reason this was the snow around him had melted. Or had not really been able to adhere, because he was lying there and he had just enough body heat so when they removed John, he was lying on grass when they removed his body. So that's where the cocktail pieces were found, and I believe it's because they were in his hand. So if something is in your hand and then an object hits you at high speed and launches you back, it's still in your hand, and that gets all the momentum. Just according to the laws of physics, that same momentum is transferred onto that object. And if you let it go, it's still going to go with you. And it's going to end up more or less in the same place. Before I get to more questions, let me see if there was anything else that we had to discuss. I do think it's worth going into what's going on here. Oh, yeah, we did go over the vehicle data. All right. Does Karen have a PR team? Who's on it? Is she paying people to go out into social media and represent her? Well, we don't know. It kind of looks like certain people are acting in that way, but we don't know. But we did see, interestingly, from what Scanlon said, Hideki cut him a $1,500 check. Now, you might say, oh, he's a private investigator. But if you was hiring him to do PI work, there would have been a contract, always. There was no contract. There was no assignment. It was just, here's the money. Keep your eyes and ear open, which is just another way of saying be useful to us. If they wanted him to go out and investigate this case, they would have done up a contract. And we recently saw, so they already had a private investigator, but they certainly could hire more. And maybe they did, I don't know. But we recently saw that Bradel sent 2 private investigators to the victim's house that was supposed to appear the day she was supposed to appear in court to talk about Aiden. So it's not that expensive for these guys at this level to you're paying if you have to pay a lawyer to go in trial for you and stand before a judge, it costs many thousands of dollars, even if it's just for one morning. So it's very expensive. So on the scheme of things, spending $1,500 for another private investigation is a drop in the bucket. Likewise, if it's for social media. And I also know from Natalie that before Natalie was helping her out, Karen, so way early in this case, long before Turtle Boy, like a year before, she was paying a PR person $15,000 a month. So keep that. Now that's according to Natalie, and Natalie's proved to be accurate on everything that she said. So keep that in mind, please. So that was probably their budget, $15,000 a month. Who benefited from that? Well, don't know, but you can look and see who on Twitter and who on other channels seems to look like maybe they're so one-sided in this that they're not asking questions. That would be a place to start. Who's communicating directly with Karen? We do know Sean's doing that. But again, I'm not saying he was part of a paid PR team. I don't know. But Sean was absolutely communicating daily with Karen over the encryption app called Signal. And something to keep in mind. All right, so I'll get back to the questions. And let's see, we've been on over an hour. So we'll probably go to about 9. And I know I'm behind on the questions. So let me try to get. If he was walking, John, how did he end up with absolutely no bruising or anything or any kind of midsection in the stomach down? Yeah, I think it's an important question, and I've asked it all summer, and that's why I came up with the idea that the taillight, clipped him in the head while he was bent down. That's my theory. I don't know what the state's theory is, and that could be. If you want to say that theory is crazy, I don't know, maybe. But to me, I came up with that theory as a way of explaining how he could get hit in the head without getting any serious injuries anywhere else. Now, he may have had some other injuries that we haven't seen the medical. We're going just by what the defense says. So maybe it will turn out that there was actually broken bones. I don't know. We'll see it later. The defense only tells you what they want to tell you. So, but you have to account for not only the injuries, but the combination of that with how did the taillight get broken. So if John was knocked back and then, for instance, hit his phone on the fire hydrant. Oh, let me take this off the screen. If he was knocked back and he hit his head, the back of his head on the fire hydrant, then how did the taillight break? So that's the key question. So, but is it possible that the taillight hit his arm or his hip in a way that maybe didn't leave bruising but broke something? Will there be evidence of there that we'll see? I don't know. Did it hit the cocktail glass at such high speed that was enough to break the taillight? Remember, the taillight isn't shattered into 1,000 pieces. It's a couple of big pieces, or one big piece and another big piece that's broken into smaller ones. But it's the outer layers that's taken off the taillight. The inner layers are okay. So something coming at an angle that clipped the corner of that taillight would just peel off that outer layer. So I think possibly the cocktail glass could be enough to do that. I don't know. So that might make more sense than the idea. And so then if that happened, then you have to explain, so how did John get pushed back? So the car comes through, it hits the cocktail glass, hits his arm, and then somehow pushes him back and he hits his head on something. I don't know. I guess I still like my other theory better. So yeah, it's a problem though to come up until you hear what the state presents. It's a problem. Karen was driving around with a cocktail glass in her car. I don't know that Karen had one. I think John had one. To me, the evidence against Karen is overpowering. I've gone over it many times in the channel, so I don't want to. If you haven't heard me say it, I'm sorry, but it gets tedious for some of the people that have been hearing me talking about it a lot. So I don't want to repeat things that I've already said. But just to sum it up, really in like 10-second version, if there's no way that taillight evidence could have been planted, then Karen is guilty. And there is really no way that it could have been planted. It's almost no way. And then there is plenty of other evidence you can look at: the GPS, the Waze data, things like that. Karen Strain's testimony. We'll look at the vehicle data, things like that. We'll see how that turns out. Microscopic taillight pieces found in John's clothing. There's a lot of stuff. And there's a lot of stuff that we haven't seen yet. All right. I'm not going to keep answering K-Pick because it's getting a little obnoxious and not really adding to anything. Scott Robinson says, it seems like Levy would have been all over a press conference too. I've seen him on TV. Yeah, absolutely. If they found powerful evidence, like actually at this point, based on what the state put in their most recent document about the strange communications between Josh Levy and the defense team that they really put out there. Right now, he's got egg on his face. Now, if he found some evidence of a conspiracy, that egg gets removed and he gets to come out and say, aha, I'm the hero. But he didn't do that. As far as we know, there have been no indictments. It seems like the investigation is over. That's why it's in the TUI process, and they're turning over the evidence. So Tennessee Grifter sounds like a really bad song. Actually, that's kind of a cool name for a song, isn't it? Tennessee Grifter. It's hard to associate cool things with Will, but that name would be kind of cool. The Glairer wants to be Turtle Boy. Yeah, he wants to be kind of like the national Turtle Boy, because the way that kind of a grifter is, as soon as this case is over and Karen is either convicted or pleads guilty, he just goes on to another case somewhere else and he doesn't care because he doesn't have a conscience. He's kind of a cowardly guy that's just learned how to make that he can make a lot of money doing this. So hey, Zeke is here from Australia. Sorry to interrupt. If everyone can just hold it right there and hit the like. Oh, thank you. I will do that. Oh no, I can't do that. Thank you guys. Please hit subscribe. Please hit like. If you're watching on Twitter, I think there's a very large audience, because when I go the next day, there'll usually be several thousand on Twitter. If you could do me a favor and just jump over to YouTube for a second and click subscribe, it would be awesome. I really want to hit 5,000 subscribers. It's tiny compared to the grifter shows like Will, the Glairer, or Turtle. I'll never catch those guys because the conspiracy is much more entertaining. So, but let me hit 5,000. That'll be a special thing for me. Appreciate it. World's worst possible YCT guest, Boozy Susie. Is she coming on? I don't know. I mean, she can be kind of rude on Twitter, but I guess she's pretty intelligent. And I don't know. That's the thing. Social media, sometimes you can have someone that's a really nice person and they get a little caught up in a case and they become a little bit unfiltered. And so maybe you're meeting a different kind of person. Maybe in real life, she's a pretty good person. Who knows? Who knows? KC said John had hemorrhaging in his pancreas and stomach from blunt force trauma. Yes, that is in the report. It's a little tricky because it says how there's evidence for hypothermia in the pancreas and stomach. And then right after that, it also says there's hemorrhaging. So, and from blunt force trauma. So it does seem like maybe he was struck there. But again, how did that break the taillight? That's the key question. So maybe it came through and it hit the cocktail glass that broke the taillight and pushed through his stomach and did the blunt force trauma and sent him back, and his head hit on I think Kate believes that the electrical box is a possibility because the electrical box has some damage on it, but it's been there a while, so it's hard to tell if it's old damage. There's no evidence Higgins flipped. It's just one of the many crazy things that have been reported for so long. If Higgins flipped, look, the evidence has now been turned over. There's no evidence Higgins flipped. What there is evidence of is that he had an affair with Karen. But the next morning, once he realized what happened, he immediately went to the police and showed them his messages. Did the right thing. Glera acts like a child. This is from Irish Heart, just makes fun of people. Yeah, because, the challenge on putting up a YouTube, and I went through this when I first put this up. My reason for doing this, that's why it doesn't have a name that sounds like true crime cottage tales or something like that. Because I didn't know that I wanted to do that. What I was looking for was a way to have an outlet to discuss maybe some of little true crime, but maybe discuss, my screenplays, maybe get some other authors on fiction that I've worked on, things like that. And so you do start thinking about what are some ways to make content that will be interesting, but that won't require you to do a ton of work, and you'll be able to produce it regularly. So this is why people do what's called reaction videos. So you don't have to investigate anything. You don't do any research. You don't have to write anything. You just put that up, put on somebody else's work, and then just react to it. And if you're entertaining enough, you can build a following. So what the grifter is doing is he just can put these up and just say stupid things. But things that sound stupid to us, to stupid people, don't sound stupid. So they become entertaining. Sorry if that's an offensive way to put it. Why the name? Does he glare a lot? I don't know. Unsafe bot from Dave's channel said no sexual relationship. Yeah, I mean, as I was saying the word affair, I didn't know if that was the right term, but there was something there. So it seemed to me that Karen was trying to kind of get revenge because she thought John was cheating on her. But what exactly was going on, I don't know. Karen did, according to his testimony, stop by his house, even when he supposedly declined that. What went on there, I don't know. The key question really will be, did Karen contact him that night after 12:32, after she left? There's no indication of that yet. There's no indication one way or the other. So that would be really interesting if she sent Brian any kind of a text. Now, here she is. She's having some kind of, I don't know what else to call it except affair. So let's call it affair. She's having some kind of a little affair, tryst. Do you like that better? She's having a little tryst with Brian Higgins. Meanwhile, when they're all out drinking that night at the waterfall, it's Karen and Brian Higgins is there with the group. And the other thing that people need to know is that Karen and John didn't go out together that night. John went out with a friend. And Karen, jealous, texted several times, "Can I meet you there?" And eventually John relented. So she showed up. That's why she's driving, because John was there. His friend had picked him up. And maybe that's why John's car was not parked in the garage. I don't know. But so if you look at that picture, Supposedly Karen's was jealous that John was flirting with the bartender, but so Karen was there to make sure she was staking her claim. All right, we'll stay on a little. Just looking through. Caitlin, thank you. Unsafe. She kissed him and they texted behind John's back. Yeah. Yep. Trying to get caught up. Wicked Psyched says people who think there was a problem with the investigation and assume defendants are correct unless they're proven guilty are not in a mob or in a cult or turtle riders. Okay, yes, I've addressed it many times. And I want to say, yes, you're right. I am not saying that everybody that questions the official account of this case is in a mob. I think I have to say it on every show. And I said it on the show when I first referred to a mob. So please, I am not talking about you. I'm talking about the people that engage in mob-like behavior and people that seem to obtusely reject evidence or make weird interpretations of meaningless evidence. So, for instance, when Sean puts out a screenshot from the dash cam that shows Jen in a hood trying to obviously keep her face out of the howling wind and talk to the trooper while they're working on John or carrying him away. And he says that's consciousness of guilt. That's nutty, professor. That's crazy. There's no way. That's not conscious. You don't know what's going on in Jen's head. She's in a blizzard with a hood on. There's nothing unusual about it. So this is part of the mob activity. Is obviously the main thing would be the behavior of trying to attack people, trying to go after families, trying to run around town getting pictures of them. That's crazy. But also just dismissing basic evidence or coming up with weird theories, like, for instance, that the feds are going to arrest everybody tomorrow when they held off just so Turtle Boy can get out of jail. That's crazy. So do you agree with that, Wicked Psyched? I mean, that's crazy, crazy, crazy. Oh, there's actually, I just realized I can hit this starred here. So I want to thank some people. Ken the plumber contributed 1999. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. The conspiracy is a bridge too far, he says. Always has been. Justice for Johnny. The way he calls him Johnny, this is probably someone that is a friend of John's that grew up with John or worked with John. Skip Tracer again. He said, well said. And so thank you, Skip. Frank Perry, the $2 again. Sailboat, $10. Oh, Patrice too, $4.99. Said cheers to a good guy. Thank you, Patrice. Appreciate it. And Tom gifted people. Tom is our man here, production the manager, and he gifted 5 more memberships. So thank you. Trying to get caught up. Judy, hi. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Judy is JJ. Jay James says your leader, Kerry, is comparing a low-speed accident. So you're trying to insult me by calling me Kerry? Is that what you're trying to do? I don't know. Maybe you can't spell. I'm not sure. A low-speed accident to a high-speed rollover a girl into the power lines. They were probably going similar speeds. The point of it was that powerful, heavy vehicles at relatively high speed, so anything over 20 miles an hour, crashing, hitting things, rolling over, really things that you might not expect happen to much smaller objects such as human bodies. Oh, I guess he was talking to Kerry Lama. Hi, Kerry. Kerry doesn't have a leader. I have facts. Exactly. This is the thing is we don't, when you listen to these turtle guys, they just they only listen to Turtle Boy, even though if they had any common sense, they understand he's lying to them, and they don't have any sense to even go out and seek other sources, seek someone that might have some different information. Look at the documents. They don't have any interest in doing that. Rich D says, I bet this clown is a Biden supporter. I mean, if you must know, I voted for Trump. It's a difficult decision because you have a choice between two awful candidates in 2020, and you'll have that same choice now. Trump did a lot of good things well, policy-wise, but dangerous because he's so ignorant and he's such a blowhard and he's such a narcissist. Biden, possibly one of the most corrupt families in U.S. politics, that literally makes his money from political influence. Also an extremely delusional and dishonest guy, but some of the things he's done as president, he's been more or less stable. You could do worse than Biden. I think Bernie is probably the real deal, a good guy, but that would have been just, Bernie Sanders, but that would have been dangerous. This is a guy that is an ideologue with a view of the world that approaches fantasy. So these are difficult choices. Ken the Plumber says Olivia Lambo is a useful idiot. Confirmed. I mean, I think she's intelligent. I don't know what the game is here. If is she just interested in this case? It seems like a lot more than that. So is she part of a paid PR team? Who knows? Hopefully someday we'll find out. She's invited on the channel anytime. Done it many times. Invited her by message. She doesn't reply. So just so you know, tomorrow night with Dave's book, we're going to talk about some cases that go back to the 1970s, but are unsolved, disappearing kid cases, and so presumably murders. But how some of the stuff that we've done in this channel, and maybe Dave on his own channel, I'm not sure, but has led to new information. So it's really exciting. And it shows that this is more than just an exercise of talking about stuff. We can, and there is a chance that you influence events, and because we do try to be fair about things. And we've seen a lot of people that left my discussions of things when they got mad when I was asking questions about the conspiracy, but a lot of them have come back, and an awful lot of them have reached out to me in private. Kind of, even many have apologized. So, but it's not necessary, but it's appreciated. Kevin, did he have blunt force injuries to his pancreas and stomach before hypothermia set in? It's in the discovery. Yes. Yep. That's in the I haven't seen anything that's in discovery that's not public, but it's in the documents. Well, yeah, absolutely. If I remember right, there were definitely the injuries. It explicitly says the injuries were there. I don't remember if those specific injuries or if they were talking about the injury to the back of the head, but it does say the injuries were there before hypothermia set in. Yep. Jay James, it's okay to be different, man. Keep asking questions. Just do it politely and keep an open mind, because I'm telling you, the evidence, there's a lot out there and it's not coming down, I think, the way maybe many people on that side have hoped. So just be careful. Tom Fleming says, I saw earlier and asked how you know what their signal conversation contain. You only know from what people tell you. Like the only way anybody would know that's that's not quite true. So the signal conversations between Karen and Natalie screenshotted them, not for any malicious reason, but because the way Signal works, the message goes through and then it's got a time ticker on it, and then it deletes and it's gone. And Natalie at the time was acting as a go-between, so those messages were going from Karen to Turtle Boy. So she would sometimes screenshot that so she would have not lose the message and have time to send it off to Turtle Boy. So if something is screenshotted, then you get to see the copy of the message. The only other way is if somebody involved in the communication tells somebody. Jackie says, I don't believe the investigation is over, and that is why the TUI, well, I don't really understand that. The TUI process is what, I don't know. I mean, the TUI process is when one branch or part of the government, one agency has important evidence that's relevant in an investigation that another branch of the government, another agency is doing. And so you have to go through this process, the TUI process, and so that evidence can be safely sent over. So I guess you have to review it for sources and methods and stuff like that, or whatever else goes into it. But there has to be a process where that goes over, because that's why when the DA's office requested it, they do have to hand it over, because there's a murder trial coming up. How did he have cuts on his nose and eyebrow? I mean, these are minor cuts, so you get flung back, your hand can hit yourself or something like that. Just looking through. Oh, I'm way behind, trying to get caught up. I try to see the questions that are directed at me, but a lot of you guys are discussing with each other, and that's good. So let's see if I'm 15 minutes behind on these chat questions. Let me see if I can get through that faster. Why use the TUI process if there isn't an active investigation? I mean, it's a good question, I guess, because I mean, we're all learning about how this process works, but I think the answer is this. The feds are not going to issue a report here. They don't have to. When the feds do an investigation, or when anybody does a grand jury, you bring something before a grand jury, you reach a point. If you reach a point where you want the jury to vote on it for indictments, then you ask them to vote on it. Otherwise, it just quietly ends. There's no report. It's just over. So if it's over, then it's time for that evidence to go into the TUI process. Elaine says, thanks, Kevin. I appreciate you. Thank you. I appreciate you too for being here, Elaine. Always. Linkston, that's a new name. Let's see if they're friendly or unfriendly to us. Something I'm confused on. If he was dropped off at the driveway and she hit him when she was going in reverse, how did she end up? He was not dropped off the driveway. That's one of the falsehoods that Turtle Land put out in the beginning of the summer. It's long. No. He was never. No one ever saw him in the driveway. Nobody. And he would have been seen. So unless they're all lying, Julie Nagel came out to go out to her brother's car to say she was staying. So no. There's no one ever has seen John in the driveway, and his GPS shows that he never went into the driveway. They went to the far edge of the property, and at some point he got out. Dog says Sean is on an innocent unless proven guilty right now. There you go. So he's backtracking, right? I mean, but this has been the history. Evidence comes out like in September when the GPS came out that showed John never went in the house. For a couple of days, he was silent. And then he reported that YCT lies, but then said, I haven't read the document yet. So you get these, and Turtle Boy did the same thing. So it's just, there's a desperation to try to make this theory work. And so they'll cling on to the next little thing that comes out. So Unsafe Bot said, I don't think that's fair. I don't think that describes the glare. He is usually anti-conspiracy theory and bashes the grifter or tragedy pimps. That maybe I don't watch his channel. I only watch the one show, but I've seen what he's done since then. There's no question that he's grifting on this case. Hasn't read any documents. He doesn't make sound arguments. He just rehashes and repeats turtle shit, and it's disgusting. The one video I watched, Unsafe, I'm not sure your first name is, like I said, was when he was going to do a reaction video to me because Brian Barrera had said, "Why, hey, just for fun, why don't you do a reaction video to this asshole Kevin?" And so he goes on there without having watched the video or knowing anything about me, but because he had put it out, the whole mob was there. He had a big crowd. He was giggling like a schoolgirl because he had this big crowd, bigger than normal crowd there, and they were all there. And he was like that kid in the schoolyard that when you see a mob of kids picking on the weaker kids, and he showed up, he could have went and stood with the weaker kids. He went and stood with the mob. He went and stood with the bullies. That's what he was doing. And look, I don't, I want to be always honest. I'm not a fighter, right? I can remember, I think it was about the third grade. Boy, I hope my family's not listening to this. They'll get mad. But so I was in a fight, probably half mile from my house. And at that point, I didn't know. I thought maybe I didn't know I wasn't a good fighter, but didn't do too well in it. And I didn't get really hurt or anything, but went home like, damn, I should probably avoid fights from now on. um, didn't always lose after that. I had a couple where I held on all right, but no, it's not like something where it was a strength. But I can remember in the first grade where I went to a public school in Lawrence, there were no teacher supervision at recess. It was the Wild West out there. It's when fights happened, nobody broke them up. And we the school is in a weird spot where there's that we called it the cliffs that surround it. There were these little cliffs about 40 feet high. Even though this is the middle of the city of Lawrence, they had blasted out this spot to put the school out of granite. And we were hanging out. We could have fallen down a cliff. We were hanging out on recesses in there, climbing trees. Nobody stopped us. This is first grade. I can remember it. And so there was a girl. Her name was Elizabeth. And I don't know she was handicapped. I don't know what the actual handicap was, but back then, this would have been early 70s. And so she had these braces that were on her legs and her arms. So that the braces would attach to her arms and they became kind of like crutches. So she would walk around with braced legs and then also use the help of the braces that were on her arms. And so she was very handicapped. And I can remember seeing the tough kids trying to pull out her arms from under her and making fun of her and attacking her as a group. And I ended up stepping in to take on these kids to try to help her. And so what happened because of that was somehow she got my number and started calling me every night. And it kind of had my first girlfriend, which I was not ready for, didn't want, and was it was pretty annoying having the phone ring every night. But the Glairs are different than that. Glare would have been with the other kids pulling the braces out so she could fall, because that's what he is. Kevin, can you talk about the civilian witness in the house and John O'Keefe's phone? The civilian witness. Well, they were all civilians. Well, Brian was a Boston cop. Brian Higgins is ATF, but everybody else is a civilian. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Civilian house, in the house, and I don't know. I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, there was a thing that confused, no, it wasn't strange at all, but there was things that confused people yesterday in the motion by the defense, where they talked about a witness in the house that they didn't know the name of, blah, blah, blah. And it got people all excited thinking there was a witness in the house that the prosecution hid that saw John in the house. Sean reported that. What a bunch of nonsense. No, all it was back in 2022 in the fall, they're saying that there was I don't know the exact sequence of it, but there was a month and a half delay before the state got this witness, his name or her contact information over to the defense team. That's it. You can look at her testimony, and it says she saw no one in the house. This is Sarah Levinson, and she saw. There's no mysterious witness. She's been known for a long time. Unsafe says there's no point speculating if we don't know how exactly his body was found. Well, I mean, we're all speculating based on the evidence. That's what we've all been doing. Everybody that's here watching, everybody that's been here for the last, 8 months, that's what we do. So, right or wrong, we in the public, we look at the evidence that we have, and we only have about 30% of it. There's a whole bunch that we don't have, and we do our best. So, people have to be careful. People have to be careful to not reach conclusions. No, when there may still be evidence out there, we have to be careful. But that doesn't mean we can't reach conclusions based on what we have, and you're willing to adjust them when the new evidence comes out. The state will have a recreation of the trial at the trial. Why would I need to do it? Yeah. And I mean, that was just the one that I did there I was trying to show my theory as to the position that he might have been standing in. And that cost me $125 to get that made up. So microdots, Richie is he's talented enough to make those things on his own. So he can do much better. I'm not. I can edit, but I don't know how to make something like that. Matthew Joy says, thanks for the 360-degree view. Your point and counterpoint helps the curious viewers. I hope he's talking to me, but yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. Obviously, I've reached conclusions in this case, but I'm willing to adjust them as new evidence comes out. And but I'll always try to see each piece of the evidence from both sides. Wolfcat says pancreatic injuries are usually a result of substantial force to the upper abdomen, resulting in compression of the pancreas. So thank you. That's really let's put that up. So this sounds like somebody that probably maybe has some medical knowledge. I don't. So pancreatic injuries are usually the result of substantial force to upper abdomen, resulting in compression of the pancreas against the lumbar vertebrae. Car accidents are predominant cause of this injury. That's really useful information. So that does seem to indicate that there's a pretty good chance that that's where the blow came. So thank you very much for that, Wolfcat. Michael Davey says, wouldn't the FBI only share if it proves their innocence? No, they basically are entitled to turn over this evidence in case it can be useful to the defense. So, for instance, you have the testimony. Most of these, several of the witnesses testified in the state grand jury and then again in the federal grand jury. So now it's useful to the defense to look at possible discrepancies. It's a curious, will the defense do that? I don't know, because the interesting thing about that strategy is that, yes, you always want to highlight discrepancies, but if the jury finds out that the FBI and the feds had this big investigation with a federal grand jury and they did not find a cover-up, then that becomes very damaging to the defense. So it may be the case that the defense doesn't want the juries to ever know about the federal investigation. I don't believe that you're going to see any testimony about 227 searches, phone deletions. The stronger evidence is that none of that ever happened. And it's also going to be counterproductive for the defense to try to portray Jen McCabe as Lex Luthor, as a sociopath who could set up the murder of her friend and was an accomplice to that. That's not going to stick. The jury is not going to buy into that. So they're not going to do it. And once you say, why not at least roll the dice and see if you can convince a juror? I mean, unless they really look, they're going to be watching the jury closely as they do. And if they think that they see a turtle rider in there, somebody that, then maybe you roll the dice knowing that you're going to piss off the other jurors, but that one juror, you'll give them something to cling to. Jay James, Higgins is still working for the ATF and found out that he has not been suspended. It was just transferred to a different location. So I'm still behind, but Unsafe likes the tryst better. All right, so that's good. I've won over some part of that. Do I know if the prosecution got access to Karen's phone? I assume so, but I've never heard any information from it. Yeah, they would have to have that by now. The trial wouldn't be proceeding without that. So they've had that for some time. So can we glean anything from that? Well, you can always say anything that the defense has not leaked in some way probably doesn't help, right? Probably doesn't help Karen. So if there was anything on that phone that tended to be powerfully exculpatory, they would have leaked it. But that didn't happen. So I'm looking for new names too, but the Nazi, who is the Nazi? Kelly Hannon. I don't know any Nazis. Am I having Turtle Boy on, you mean? I mean, I don't think Turtle Boy is a Nazi. I think he's a bit of a cult leader, but that's different. No, I'm not having any Nazis on. Unsafe bot. Yes, she said people are going crazy. This is an important thing because I think Unsafe is probably a free Karen Reed person, and that was her original interest in this. I don't know that, so I'm not saying that in any way disparagingly, but she does have a healthy attitude towards this because she's saying that it's crazy for people to look at things like Jen's tone of voice or body language and draw conclusions, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. So I agree with you 100% Unsafe. And Jeff says it's all out there now. You will soon know the reaction of the lawyers and what will happen next. Exactly. And to me, if you get silence tomorrow, like you've had so far tonight, there was nothing big in the Fed report. And we certainly know there's been no indictments, suspensions, or anything like that. So, 904. Let's see. I got to get caught up again. My affiliation with Dave Dave is not a white supremacist. He's a Trump supporter. He's never said anything racist to me. I talk to Dave every day. So, yeah, we have to be a little careful, Kelly, that we're all going to have different political opinions. And let's be a little more generous and forgiving with each other. Dave is someone who's fought for his country a lot and had a very difficult time growing up, very unfortunate situation. And a lot of injuries suffered in surgeries in the wars. He fought both in Afghanistan and in Iraq. He's the opposite of a Nazi. He's someone that believes in freedom. He's someone that is against us getting involved in things like Syria or Ukraine, precisely because he doesn't think it's America's role is to be policing countries overseas or trying to spread bases overseas or anything like that. So he's not a Nazi. He's the opposite of a Nazi, really. But that doesn't mean you have to agree with all of his opinions. I know he does a lot of politics on his show. I don't watch anybody's show, so I don't really watch Dave's show, especially since I can find out anything from him more directly when I talk to him. So, but let's be more forgiving to each other. That most of the time, we all have the same. We Americans have the same goals. We believe in freedom of speech. We want everybody to have the opportunity to have the freedoms to grow up and pursue their own lives, whether it's business opportunities or artistic or whatever. We want a healthy economy. We want ideally most people to have access to healthcare. So, but the idea we may have different understandings of how we get there, but it shouldn't really be something that we judge everybody else about if they have a different idea than us. You should more focus on the fact that they agree with you on more things than they disagree, and not get too upset about the things that you disagree. And it's also more effective and more productive to engage with people like that, because Dave is someone that is willing to engage with pretty much anybody. And so just have a discussion with him. You either go to his channel and have a discussion with him, or if you don't like the channel, then you don't have to go there. But he's definitely not a Nazi. All right, trying to see where I am. Am I almost caught up? I'm at 9:12. So no, having a time. I want to get caught up without skipping over anybody's. I want to see everybody's questions, especially. Wolfcat, otherwise you would have no reason to be swabbing inside a wound. What other body? Yeah, I mean, there was no reason to swab for the police at the time to take swabs of the minor scratches on John's arm. They weren't anticipating the defense's theory. So, yes, Fox News is saying. Well, it's in the article. I went over it yesterday, but yeah, they've said for a while that the DNA on the tail, that they were testing DNA on the taillight, and I guess that's finally confirmed that that's John's DNA. So, but if you're going to believe that they were planting microscopic taillight pieces, I guess you can believe that they planted that too. All right. See, I didn't really lead out your whole comment, oh dog. I just maybe didn't fully understand it. So, dude, you left out my whole comment, just like you won't. See, I don't. You don't word things in a way that I'm able to comprehend. That's the problem. You won't take. You mean talk about the eyewitness phone pairing with John's. I have not heard about any witness phone pairing with John's. So, and that happened in the house. Show me where that evidence is. I've read every document. I've never seen that. So yeah, that would be interesting if John's phone paired with somebody else's phone, because our devices are always trying to pair. Like Apple devices are always trying to pair with other Apple devices. So did that happen? And that's done. You don't even have to have an app open. They automatically do that. But I have never seen any evidence that John's phone paired with anything inside the house. So if you have some source on that, okay, let us know. But otherwise, you're just picking up something off Twitter. And that's the danger here. Sailboat went to school in Haverhill in the 70s. So some of the stuff we'll be talking about tomorrow relates to that. So one of the guys involved with this, his name was Charles Pierce. Monstrous guy, was from Haverhill. Caitlin, he says he wants to help build a wall. Doesn't Biden now say that too? Didn't Biden just say, if you give me, he said just last week, I've been asking 3 years for the tools to close the border, and Republicans in Congress won't give it to me. He said it. I watched it. So I mean, people have their different beliefs, and it doesn't make them Nazis. People have beliefs based on their own experiences, on their own research. Those beliefs might be right, they might be wrong. But to be a Nazi, what would it mean to be a Nazi, Kelly? Is a Nazi, to me, a Nazi is, I'm a history guy. I have a degree in history. I've studied all this stuff closely. So there are no Nazis, no that I've ever met or heard about or read about in the United States now. Okay, so but if you want to try to compare someone to Nazi Germany, do you mean a nationalist that wants to go building an empire like Hitler did? Well, that's definitely not Dave. Do you mean someone that wants to oppress other people's rights in any way? That's not him. So there might be other things that you would disagree with. I might disagree with some of them too, but there's nothing Nazi-ish going on. There's no doesn't want to put people in concentration camps um, or oppress anybody. He's more than anything, he's kind of a libertarian, as I am too, and I don't agree with all of his political views, but and nor do I know all of them either. But I mean, I'm libertarian in the sense that I believe in people's rights. Um, believe that the primary function of government is to protect people's liberties. But I'm not libertarian in the sense of libertarian party because they tend to be a little cuckoo. So and I do believe there's a role for government that we want. So there was a time in our history we believed that in laissez-faire government, right? But I do believe that there is a role for the safety net. That's why we have Social Security. That's why we have meat inspectors. You know, there is a role for the federal government. But I do think there's a danger in the federal government getting too big, too strong, too corrupt. And there is a tendency on the part of one of the parties to like everything to do with the government because it increases their power and it increases it's why they like more taxes because it's more stuff that they can spend and dole out and that all comes back in votes. So, I mean, but I voted for Bill Clinton in 1992 because I believed that even though George Bush Sr. in many ways was a very good president, especially on foreign policy, and he was an experienced hand at the wheel, but I believed he was out of touch with something very important, and particularly healthcare. So, but then Clinton came in and Hillary was assigned the task of healthcare, and her plan was awful. So you end up just being confused. I do think Romney Care, which evolved into Obamacare, despite all its flaws, was a good plan. And I'm only here because of it. So, but I did think that before that. Um, someone is saying there's a nurse from the ER that come forward. I saw somebody post that too a couple weeks ago. Never seen it. Never seen it. So actually close. Amazingly. No, I'm not that close. I'm still every time I think I'm getting next to the end of the chat where I'm caught up to everybody, I look and it puts a bunch more up here. All right, so Makelron, not sure if I pronounced that right. Could the state use the information that came down from the federal investigation not materializing to go ahead and move forward with possible further indictments against Karen and Turtle? I don't know. That's a really complicated thing. And in theory, we're hearing that maybe the state is interested in charging conspiracy between Karen and Turtle, and we've been hearing that for a while, but we saw a lot of evidence of that in that recent opposition motion. You can kind of see the groundwork they're laying for it. But I think there are a lot of strategic considerations, and I don't think that they want to do something that's going to jeopardize the main event, which is the murder trial. So I suspect that we might not see any conspiracy charges between them. If we see them at all, it might be after the trial. I don't know, but I don't think the main event is the trial, and they don't want to interfere with that. Banksy says maybe Higgins asked to be transferred. We don't know that. I guess he didn't know. Brian Higgins wasn't from that area and had become friendly with these guys over only in the preceding year. So he didn't know them very long. WCT, yeah, thank you, Wicked. Appreciate it. I mean, let's just try to be fair to each other, generous to each other. I can say in my life that when I was in college and then afterwards owning a bar, bartending, and then owning a bar, a lot of the great people that I knew that I really enjoyed being around had a real diversity of opinions, and some of them were. There was this guy Justin from Worcester that was a real conspiracy guy, a huge, almost, maybe even a socialist. I think I didn't agree with any of his political opinions, but I loved that guy. That guy was great. That guy was intelligent and fun to be around. I mean, so find the positive. If you go to Thanksgiving and you got 10, 15, 20 people from your family there, or you go to a wedding, you're going to have a family wedding, you're going to have relatives there. And I don't care if you're a conservative or a liberal, there are going to be people there that really strongly disagree with you, but yet you love them because you know the other things that they've done in your family, right? So try to be generous in the same way with everybody else, as long as you know they're basically good people, and say, okay, they have some ideas that you consider a little out there. You look at my ideas and you say, you know what? He's not a bad guy, but his ideas I don't agree with. They're a little bit out there. And then you don't make it all about politics. And afterwards, you find the things that you do agree on, and you have a little bit of fun. You have some beers, you shoot a game of pool, whatever. I mean, just ease up. Remember that people that are good people that have done good things can have ideas that you don't agree with, and hope that other people view you the same way. Because one thing I can say for sure is that every single one of us right now has a box of ideas that are important to us. And with every single one of us, some of those ideas are wrong. Okay? None of us bats 1,000 when it comes to things like that. Political views, right or wrong issues, codes, and things like that. So let's accept that we're all wrong to a degree, which means someone else might be right. If you're wrong on some particular thing, that means someone else is right. So, have a dialogue with people, and hope everybody learns and gets better. Try to convince people more to your side. As far as Dave's position on Karen Reed, I don't watch. I just talked to Dave. I don't watch his channel. So that's if you go to his channel. I'm not sure when his next show is. I'm sure it's coming soon. Go to his channel and you find out what his position is on any of these things. He speaks for himself. Unsaved says, I wouldn't call myself free Karen Reed. I would say I'm a hold our government accountable person. Then you and I get along good. That's exactly what I think. But as you've seen here, and look, if you've read the document, and please read the state's opposition to the motion to dismiss. It's powerful stuff. And you're not going to just put things that are out and out lies in here. And also read the motion to get Karen's phone, the warrant for her phone. This stuff that's been going on here, that this defense team has done, that is extremely, incredibly unethical. And it just is. They're accusing people of things, of murder, or participating in murder that they know. They know that Colin was not in that house. They have the data. They know it. And yet they're still willing to use PR and friendly media. They gave those pictures. You think Turtle Boy found those pictures of Colin on their own? No. Turtle Boy, once he puts a story out, he'll get all kinds of people sending him stuff. But all those pictures of Colin, excuse me, such as one where he had bruised knuckles or scratched knuckles, that was put on day one of this story. That had to have been collected by Karen and her team. Just take one more sip because I got that little cough. So Karen and her legal team sent her Turtle Boy the idea that Colin was behind this, and they had to have, and sent the picture of Colin with knuckles and other pictures, bruised knuckles and other things. So her team was portraying Colin as the killer. Now, I don't know if they knew then, because the data probably wasn't in discovery yet, because there was no reason to, with Colin not being in the house at that time. But they know now that was wrong, that the data shows Colin was not in the house. So correct it. People have a right to a fair trial, and I absolutely believe that there's a lot of abuse that goes on in trial system, but there are limitations. All right, Kelly, I've kind of lost interest in talking because you just don't have an open mind. So you're welcome back anytime when you have an open mind. So. All right, let's see. Am I getting close to the end? Let's zip right to the end then, if we can. All right, so I am now, it's 9:46. I'm at the last comment from Jackie. So a lot of times trying to get up, I was behind. So if I missed a question that was important, please send it now. Or if you just want to add some important piece of opinion, we'll spend a couple more minutes and then we'll call it a night. And so, but thank you everybody for being here. 3 nights in a row. This is an awful lot. This is more than I want to do on this stuff, but so we'll put up Caitlin's comment. The problem is she needed to use Colin to fuel the conspiracy because she needed a reason for all the adults to keep quiet. Yes. Excellent. Excellent, Caitlin. That's exactly what it was back then. They didn't think that everybody would be willing. They didn't think that everybody would be willing to participate in a conspiracy like this to protect Brian. So that's why they brought up Colin, because they said, because Colin was only 17 at the time. So they thought this was they would all rally around the kid. And that was what Turtle Boy argued very strenuously. So excellent point, Caitlin. Thank you. All right. I hate to do it, but I'm putting her in timeout because I don't want this to be a discussion about Dave's political views. It's ridiculous. Maybe I let it go on too long. I'm sorry, but I put her in timeout. It's just not helpful. We're not even here to talk about that. And you want to attack one person for their political views that you don't agree with? How are you aware of all those views? You must be watching the channel then. So what if it bothers you so much? Why are you still watching? I don't really understand it. But I mean, you're welcome back if you want to be civil and respectful and just listen to other people. We're not. So when Dave comes on tomorrow, we are not talking politics. We don't generally discuss very little politics. Rarely. I've always been against discussing politics on this channel because it gets misinterpreted. To the extent that I do, is I really just kind of want people to know that there are often both sides of things. So it's that we all get stuck up in our own viewpoint sometimes. So it's important to try to see the other sides of things. So, but Dave is on tomorrow to talk about cases. They're important. Some new information has been developing. I think it's interesting. And if Dave can help lead to a resolution of these cases, it would mean a lot to the families. So it's important work, and you don't want to let his political views get in the way of that. That seems kind of crazy. So, does anybody have any more final thoughts before we head off? Oh, my back is starting to hurt. Anything else, guys? We're still holding steady at 100. That's pretty good. That's not Glera numbers, right? But it's a good crowd though. It's you're starting to recognize the group of people in chat, and they're very intelligent, and they bring up interesting sides, and we're willing to look at this from both sides. So. Judy says they all tossed Karen under the bus because they were sick of her act, rightly so. I don't know. Kathy, are you the same person as, I don't know. But anyways, it's okay. I mean, we can talk politics a little, just try to be open to other people and other sides of things. That's all. I mean, it's, let's try to keep it friendly. We're not solving any of these problems. Nobody out there is the only people out there doing things that are disgusting are people like Tom's CPU, all right, that are out there trying to smear people. But also, I would say, listen, Aidan Kearney is not a Nazi, but that mob that has been created, that is built on their power is built on the idea of terrorizing people, of making them feel that you can't take them on because they'll smear you. They use that, not just him, but the people around him use that very self-consciously. And I've seen the messages that show, oh, we're gonna post a nasty picture of you tomorrow if you don't play ball. Does that really what you want to be a part of? Does that have a place in this? None of us here does. But I mean, to me, that's the closest thing that I would say. But that's not Nazi. It's not a Nazi. It's more just a cult. But all right, guys. Good night. Tomorrow I'll be on with Dave, and then I'll be on a little bit. I don't like to go on every night unless it's breaking news. I'll be on a little bit less next week. I have some medical treatments that will go on for 5 days in a row, but I'll still be on. They shouldn't be too taxing. But good night, guys. Thank you.